Hey, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up SSL and subdomains using Caddy Server on your local development environment. Now, with Caddy Server, SSL or HTTPS connections come out of the box supported, so there's nothing you really have to set up there. But the subdomains does require a little bit of a setup. And the reason I needed to get subdomains to be working on my development environment is because I'm using them to identify tenants in a multi-tenant application. So let's say, for example, this is a project that's running on Localhost. And up here, I have this subdomain called Pink Crayfish VFERZ. Now, the subdomain is unique for a tenant. So what I can do using Next.js and server-side rendering is to get this value and then use it to search in my MongoDB database. So that way, all these posts, images, and tags are going to be coming back because they belong to that tenant. And I really needed to get this to work in development for actually building this feature. Now, I didn't really know how to approach this at first, but I actually came across a podcast around the same time I was trying to figure this out on Syntax. And the guy who is behind Caddy Server was talking about this. I'm like, hey, maybe I should check this out and see if I can get it to work. So I went to their documentation and I went ahead and installed Caddy Server. Now they have official ways you can install it, but I'm actually already using Homebrew on my Mac in order for the easy way to manage packages on my Mac. So just find whatever way it is that you use to install this. Again, I used Homebrew, and Homebrew here, I'll link all this stuff in the description below, is a really simple package manager you can install on your Mac. So once you have that, the next thing you want to do is you want to either run your Caddy server from the command line, or you can set up a Caddyfile in your project and then run a Caddy command from that project, which is the way that I ended up going about with my project. So let's go into my project here and let's come down to our root of our project. And you'll see here that I have this file called Caddyfile with a capital C, and it has no extension at the end. So let's just open this. You can see here how simple this is to get set up. So first, what I did is I set up the domain here, the subdomain, which is the one that is actually pointing to something and is going to be useful for a value that's in the database. And then in order to get this to work on to localhost, I realized I had to do .localhost. So I was trying to do something like test.com, but that wasn't working. So localhost is the way I was able to actually get this to work on localhost. And then what you want to do is you want to pass in a value called reverse proxy, which points to where your application's actually running. So in this case, because it's Next.js, Next.js out of the box runs on localhost 3000. And this is everything you need to do as far as getting Caddyfile set up if all you're doing is using HTTPS and getting subdomain support. Now, obviously, I'm just scratching the surface of what Caddyfile can do. You can run Caddy on your actual production to set up a server. But in this case, I just wanted to do something really simple with subdomains. So what you do now, once you have this Caddyfile set up in your root directory and you have Caddy Server installed with whatever method you use, in my case, I use Homebrew, you want to go in, and I have a new terminal here in VS Code, and I want to run Caddy run. So this is going to boot up my Caddy Server. So that looks like everything's good here. Then what I want to do is I want to run npm run devs. That's going to start running my Next.js project in my local development environment. All right, so once that's compiled successfully, I'm going to come back into my project and just refresh here. And just to make it a little clearer how this subdomain is being used in the code, I'm going to show you a middleware function that I'm using in get server-side props, which is running on the login page in order to get and grab that, that tenant ID. So let's go back here and look at this with tenant middleware function. You can see here that I am passing in the context and just destructuring the request and response, which is passed in on the context through Next.js. Then I'm grabbing the host on the headers.host. And then I need to decide here, is this a custom domain? So I'm going to allow tenants to actually set up custom domains that go to www.theircustomdomain.com. Or I'm going to see if it doesn't start with a www, which means that it's the automatic subdomain that I give them. So in this case, this is the one that's running because this isn't a custom domain. So what it does is it just takes that first value from the host that's passed in, and then it uses it to search for a tenant in the database based off the subdomain value. And then all it's going to do here is send the domain back as a JSON object. And if there's any errors, it's just going to return false, which I can then use to redirect the user. So let's go into one of our pages here to show you how I'm using this. So let's go into the login page. And here you can see I'm exporting the get server-side props, which comes from Next.js, passing in the context. And then I have this tenant response, which is waiting for that response from the with tenant middleware. It's parsing it, and then if it comes back as null, I'm just going to redirect that person to a 404 page. Otherwise, I'm going to get that value and pass it into props, which means that I can get access to it here in this login component, and then pass it down to this login, this login page, and then I can pass it down into this login component. And then the value that this component needs is that subdomain. And that's going to be used, as you can see, if we open the login component, it's going to be used to call the login function to Firebase in order to log in this person using Firebase authentication. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and be sure to check out our other design and development tutorials on skillthrive.com as well as our YouTube channel. Again, I'm Hunter from Skillthrive, and I'll see you in the next one.